The fracture at Küsnacht. The year was 1913, and the world was humming with the mechanical certainty of the new century. Industry was booming, cities were expanding, and the human intellect believed it had finally mapped, measured, and mastered the physical world. But inside a quiet house in Küsnacht, Switzerland, the clockwork of the modern mind was beginning to fracture. Carl Gustav Jung, the brilliant Swiss psychiatrist and former heir apparent to Sigmund Freud, sat alone in his study. As he watched the familiar, peaceful landscape of Europe outside his window, a terrifying vision dissolved the reality before him. In its place, he saw a monstrous tide of crimson, an ocean of blood and floating refuse, rising to swallow the Alps and flatten the civilizations of the West. This was not a nightmare born of a restless night's sleep. It was what he called a waking dream, a sudden, violent intrusion that clawed its way straight through the floorboards of his rational consciousness. In the days and weeks that followed, the visions returned, accompanied by voices and intense internal imagery. Jung felt the cold, suffocating touch of a terrifying dilemma. Was he losing his mind to the dark fog of psychosis? Or was his individual mind touching something far older, more vast, and more terrifyingly real than himself? For 9 agonizing months, he lived in that paralyzing space of uncertainty. He walked a razor's edge between madness and revelation. Then, in August 1914, the first guns of the Great War fired. The outer world erupted into unprecedented slaughter. The inner tide of blood Jung had witnessed had met the reality of the outer world. His vision had not been a symptom of a broken brain, but a prophetic bridge to a collective human reality. The ghost in the machine. For decades following Jung's experiences, mainstream science flatly dismissed these strange flickers of the mind. We called them daydreaming, mind-wandering, or, more dismissively, idle distractions. For a long time, psychology and neuroscience treated the human brain like a classic steam engine. When it was actively pulling a heavy train of thought or solving a problem, it was on. When it wasn't engaged in a specific task, it was supposedly off, resting in a state of cognitive blankness. But eventually, the machines caught up to the mystery. In the late 20th century, the advent of neuroimaging technologies like PET and fMRI scans began to glow with an impossible, disruptive truth. When a research participant sat in a completely silent room, eyes closed, instructed to do absolutely nothing, their brain did not go dark. Instead, it lit up like a metropolis at midnight. The data revealed that a resting brain burns nearly the exact same amount of metabolic glucose as it does when solving a complex, high-stakes mathematical equation. The engine was never off. It was just exploring an entirely different territory. Neuroscientists eventually gave this hidden, highly coordinated network of brain activity a formal name: the Default Mode Network, or DMN. The DMN is the brain's internal narrator, the quiet weaver of the concept of self. It maps our past, projects our future, and constructs the autobiographical narrative of who we are. It is the biological engine of the reverie, the spontaneous, unbidden mind-wandering that we so often push aside, penalize, and suppress in our modern, hyper-productive culture to focus on our endless, daily to-do lists. The alchemy of the inner eye Jung, who spent years following the cryptic whispers of ancient alchemists and mystics, intuitively knew what science is only now proving. There is a monumental structural difference between mere fantasy and the true imagination. To understand this distinction, we have to look at how we treat our internal landscape. Fantasy is the static on the radio, a passive drift into escapism, a way to numb ourselves to the present reality. True imagination is the active tuning of the dial until a clear, distinct voice comes through the static. To navigate this terrain, Jung developed a radical therapeutic method he called active imagination. He didn't just passively watch the strange images floating across his mind. He actively engaged them. He spoke to them, challenged them, and demanded answers. He treated the sudden, unexpected eruptions of his unconscious mind not as symptoms to be medicated, but like curious guests arriving at a dinner party. Through this harrowing work, Jung realized that our imagination is not just an empty psychological playground or a byproduct of boredom. It is a noetic faculty, an intrinsic, alternative source of profound insight that carries what the philosopher William James once observed as a curious sense of authority. It is an ancient, symbolic way of knowing and perceiving reality that the rigid logic of the intellect can never fully reach or comprehend. Reclaiming the wilderness. We are a species built fundamentally on the architecture of the imaginary. Our greatest leaps forward have never come from raw, linear computation, but from the depths of the unseen. From the charcoal bison painted on the dark cave walls of Lascaux to the revolutionary physics equations of Albert Einstein, who famously claimed that his imagination was far more important than his knowledge. We have always been, at our core, daring explorers of the inner wilderness. The default mode network is not a design flaw in our biological programming. It is our evolutionary legacy. By learning to embrace our reveries rather than constantly fighting them, we stop being mere tool makers and cogs in an industrial machine. We become what we were always evolutionary meant to be, conscious vessels for the vast, rich totality of the human psyche. We are a species birthed directly from the shimmering heat of the imaginary, and we have always stood as the living bridge between the seen and the unseen worlds. The default mode network is not a glitch in our biology. It is our greatest evolutionary inheritance. It is the sacred inner wilderness where the self is continuously woven, pulled apart, and remade, and where the psyche truly breathes. When we finally stop dismissing our reveries as unproductive or lazy, and instead learn to treat them as sacred, intelligent guests, the structural fabric of our world begins to shift. By reclaiming our capacity for disciplined distraction, we do infinitely more than just solve our personal riddles and psychological neuroses. We actively participate in the collective re-enchantment of a fractured world. We find that a simple walk through the woods is no longer a solitary, isolated act of exercise, but a living dialogue with the invisible, vibrant forces of nature. We find that the sudden, unbidden images of our waking dreams are not inconvenient intrusions, but precise compass needles pointing us toward our own internal wholeness. To embrace your reverie is to step fully into your primal power as a creator. It is to look inward and recognize that within you lies a profound, noetic portal, a gateway to a depth of truth that the intellect alone can never plumb. As we learn to walk the narrow, brave path between our outer, practical knowledge and our inner, mythic visions, we become true vessels for the totality of the human spirit. We realize at last that the imagination is not just a childish place to hide from reality. It is the very fire that lights our way forward through the dark, turning the chaotic blood and refuse of our daily struggles into the gold of a life lived in perfect alignment with the soul. The great odyssey of the mind has only just begun.